Russia unleashed one of the deadliest attacks of the year in northeastern city of Sumy. Ukraine claims at least 34 people have been killed and 117 others were injured in the deadly strikes that coincided with Palm Sunday. The attack comes just days after Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, held talks with President Vladimir Putin amid Trump's call to end the war. Here's a report.
Sumy, Ukraine's strategic northeastern city, is bearing the brunt of the deadliest Russian onslaught. These are the images of the moment of strike. Screams and cries for help echo in the streets of Sumy. Moscow's massive Palm Sunday missile attack marks a fresh escalation in Russia's spring offensive in Ukraine, as people offered services on one of the busiest church-going days of the year. 2 ballistic missiles struck the heart of the city, triggering a huge explosion. With bodies strewn on the streets, emergency workers rushed to save those stuck under debris.
It was very loud. Everything shook, and then there was smoke at once. The curtains went inside. My windows faced the backyard, so they were skewed, and the curtain rods fell. Those who live on the other side suffered more. Balcony doors and windows were blown out. People had many injuries, including cuts.
Chaos and mayhem grip Sumy. Several houses and cars are in flames, with firefighters racing to evacuate residents and extinguish the blaze. Images of body bags on the streets show the damage and devastation Russia wanted to inflict on Ukraine.
Emergency works are underway, wounded are being tended to. Many people were outside on the street. The enemy counted to inflict the biggest damage to people and to the city of Sumy. Wounded are getting assistance now. All services are working at the site.
Sumy's proximity to Russia makes it a critical point for both defensive and offensive operations. It is a mere 28 km from Russian border. Control over Sumy allows for the monitoring and potential disruption of movements across the border, impacting supply lines and military logistics. The city's infrastructure and transportation networks are vital for regional connectivity. Sumy has endured increased Russian attacks, with President Vladimir Putin proposing the establishment of buffer zone to protect the adjacent Kursk region. The deadly assault has drawn condemnation from Ukraine and its European allies, who have called out Putin for prolonging the war. And all this devastation comes as President Donald Trump attempts to orchestrate a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. Has the Ukraine war reached a point of no return, or does peace still have a chance? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Mr. Yehor Bralian is a security analyst and associate professor of international relations at the Kiev Aviation Institute. Professor Bralian is now joining us live from Kiev. Professor, welcome to WION World is One, and it's good to see you, albeit in this trying moment for Ukraine. I'm receiving reports that the death toll in Sumy is on the rise so far. 34 people have died. But let's put that aside for a moment. President Putin and Russia, despite the talks continuing, is actually ignoring calls by Trump to cool it down and allow for room for negotiations. Why do you think he's escalating the war, especially after his conversation with Trump?
Good evening, thanks for having me. Well, first of all, Putin and Russians, they don't care how many Ukrainians they could kill, and today's attack on Sumy is a clear example that it's a war against Ukrainian civilians, and Russians want to kill all Ukrainians or subjugate all Ukrainians. And regarding Putin and Trump, Putin is simply manipulating the American president, and Trump repeats the narratives of Russian propaganda. However, we have seen that Trump continued for 1 year more the economic sanctions towards Russia, and Putin doesn't want a peace, and Putin wants to continue this war of attrition against Ukraine, and it's a genocide of Ukrainian nation, because Russian occupiers they kidnap Ukrainian children, they kill Ukrainian civilians, women, children, different groups of Ukrainian society, and
Professor Brelian,
Professor
Brelian, let me ask you this then. We've been hearing calls that President Volodymyr Zelensky wants Europe and the President of the United States of America to pressure Putin. If he continues with this call, this is not the first time that he's made this call. This is not the second time that he's made this call. It's actually the 5th time that he's made this call. Who and what can pressure Putin to calm down?
European countries and NATO countries, they can put more pressure on Putin and Russia by strengthening more sanctions, and by telling like you will face a trial in The Hague, and Russians kill Ukrainians because they are sure that there won't be any accountability for them. And I'm talking not only about Russian dictator Vladimir Putin or Russian officials, but also Russian soldiers who commit these war crimes. First of all, sanctions. Secondly, more military support for Ukraine, more joint production of armaments, and the world community must do everything in order to make the Russian Federation a pariah, because Russia doesn't feel as a lonely country, and there are some countries which provide Russia with military support. First of all, it's Iran and North Korea. China is trying to be more neutral. However, we know that China is providing Russia with non-lethal support, and the international community remains silent. Yes, there are some statements, but we want to see more actions rather than statements.
All right. Mr. Yehor Brelian, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for making time for us today.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.